Welcome to Drinking from the Fire Hose. I'm Roger Wilcox and I'm co-hosting the series with Murray McMillan, who you'll see shortly. This 10-minute video is aimed at equipping managers to improve their team's performance, and the focus of this video is on standards and unifying your team to deliver repeatable results. We're going to give you some practical tips on how to do that, and at the end of the video we'll leave you with an activation enabling you to immediately put into practice what you've heard. So what's the goal? The goal is to use standards to unify the team around consistently delivering repeatable results, and in turn consistently delivering excellent outcomes. Now, why is it important for leaders to establish and use standards? Well, firstly, standards show what good should look like. They're not to be confused with procedures, which give a step-by-step process on how to do something, but rather standards set expectations and show the reader how to achieve repeatable results. They enable new or improved ways of working to be locked in by the team. And one of the real advantages of establishing clear standards is that your customer gets exactly what they expect, regardless of who's doing the task. So as an example, when I have contractors working for me, I have an expenses standard, which visually shows what's required for each of them to deliver expenses and their expense claims in a consistent format. This helps me submit consistent right first-time expense claims to clients. It eliminates rework and admin burden, and it helps my company, Matrix Solutions, get paid by clients on time, which in turn ensures that my contractors get paid on time. Now, standards are especially important for site-based personnel, but as the example above shows, these standards are also valuable for office-based personnel to use. So now, over to you, Murray.
Thanks, Roger. Yes, a couple to add on there, and I guess reflecting back on some of our earlier videos where we've talked an awful lot about improvements and making improvements, standards are a great way to lock these in, and it's a good way to then share around what you've actually done as an improvement, to share it around the wider team and the wider group. It also ensures you get repeatability, and I guess exact repeatability. That's what you're looking for with the standard. And a really simple example I've seen offshore many times is there's a standard for what you wear, so your PPE when you go out on the plant, and almost every platform in the locker room will have a picture, a really simple picture of what you should look like. You've got your hard hat, your glasses, your ear defenders, and everything else. So it's very visual, and there's no excuse for getting it wrong. And it's there, it's front and center, and it's not full of words. It's a picture, nice and visual. It also helps you stop the silly errors, so it helps avoid making the silly errors because you've got this very visual standard that everybody can refer to, and it's hopefully in the right places at the right time. So it's also, if you're having issues and problems, resolve it, sort it, put a standard in place, and then hopefully things will improve. Yeah. And I guess like all improvements, it's probably not do the standard once and forget about it. You may have to keep revisiting over time. Yeah. Anything else for you on that one, Roger?
No, I think that's good, Murray. So how about we go on to the next area? How do we assess it?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at your current performance, the most obvious one is actually, do you have any standards currently? Are they in place? So if you were to wander around your workplace or your office environment, do you have some standards there already? If you do, that's great. But are they still current? Are they still valid? It is also a key point. And I guess with anything like this, is it obvious to whoever's looking at it for the first time? Does it convey that message very clearly? There's a danger with some of these that you need a doctorate to understand it. It's full of words and technical jargon. Or is it a really simple image with just a little bit of information to go with it? So again, is it easy to understand? And are people aware of them? Are people trained in what the standards are? And most importantly, why? So rather than just saying, here's the standard, get on with it, help them understand why we have this as a standard. There's probably been lessons learned over time that has got us to this position. So it's good to share it. And I guess the final point for me in this one is when you bring in new members of staff, new people into the team, explain the standards to them, engage them in why we have them and why they're important. Over to you, Roger, for anything else.
Yeah, thanks, Murray. I think that's really good. And I think the other one is how standards, they do show how things are done around here. So once you've got them really clear, like my expenses example, that's just how we do things. And so it's very visual. It's what should happen. So how do you achieve this? We're going to spend a very short time on this 10-minute video, but we'll give you more detail in the longer video. But essentially, some things that leaders can do is decide, first of all, what activities need a standard. You can do that with your team. Some simple things I often think about and talk to people I coach. Where do repeat failures come from? What keeps occurring? Where do things keep going wrong? Then that's probably screaming out for a standard to be established, especially if you're getting inconsistencies between people doing things in different ways, so you're getting a different result each time. So that probably requires a standard to be developed and expectations to be laid in that area. So where is customer satisfaction important? If that's a really critical one, then go for it. As an example, in a McDonald's or something like that, if you go in, you want your burger, your Big Mac to be looking exactly like this, not all squinty and squishy and looking something unedible. So the standard is really important. So maintaining visual standards, if you needed to maintain a visual standard, perhaps in your office, having a tidy workspace and looking a certain way, then set the standard. Now, the other feature is not everything needs a standard, so you need to discern what is it that you want to set the standard on. We'll talk more in the longer video about creating a standard, some of the things that will be in mind and how to engage your team on it. And we'll give a bit of anecdotes about leaders as well. Murray, I'll pass over to you though. Anything else on how to achieve the goal to share in this 10-minute snip?
I guess just a couple. I mean, excuse me, using your office analogy, keeping your workspace clean. Where I think it really helps is, using the plain words. We all have different standards. So your clean might be different to my clean. At least this way it lays down, this is what we expect as an organization, as a team. Here's the sort of the standard that we're working to, so that everybody is on the same page with it.
Yeah.
My only other thought for this kind of short version, and again, we'll expand in the full one, is engage your team when you're creating these things, work with them. Your standards are far, far more effective when you create it with your team rather than doing it to them, just presenting them with a set of standards. So the more you can engage them, I think the more powerful they'll be, probably the more sustainable they'll be. And like everything else, we've spoken about in this, you will get great ideas from your team. So they may actually have some ideas in there that you haven't thought about. So engage the team when you're pulling these together, I think is fairly key.
That's a really good point, Murray, because I think the other aspect of that is they own it. If you engage a team, they actually own the outcome. So they're more likely to live up to the standard and work with it. I think also for leaders, we've got more in our longer video, but put in place training and support for the standards and actually make it easy for people to comply to them. And as we've talked about before, do your go CSSs. So I guess that gets us into the activation. One of the things we've said is we'd like at the end of the video to give you some simple activations so that you can immediately put into practice what you've heard, even during this 10-minute clip. So the first activation for you is conduct a go, see and assess. Go and look at your team standards. What did you learn from that? So what are those standards and what did you learn from them? Over to Murray for the next activation.
Yeah, I think hopefully you will find some standards. Hopefully you've got them there. So another thing to check is, are they still valid? Are they up to date? Are they valid? Again, just one daft example to highlight this. Again, from an offshore, there's certain PPE you have to wear. One of these things is a gas monitor. So is that visual standard that you have up on the wall the current gas monitor, or is it one that we stopped using 2 or 3 years ago? So again, just make sure these things are valid and up to date. And they'll obviously be far more, people will take them more seriously if they're up to date and they can identify with them. So yeah, beyond that, good luck with this one. And as always, there's more detail in the longer version, and we look forward to seeing you next time.